Hi, this is Felix Gervits from the U.S. Army Research Lab, and today I'll be talking about our paper, which was a collaboration between ARL, the Naval Research Lab, NRL, and the Tufts University Human-Robot Interaction Lab. So the title of the paper is How Should Agents Ask Questions for Situated Learning? An Annotated Dialogue Corpus. So as a kind of motivation, the long-term goal here is we want to have situated agents that operate seamlessly in mixed teams with humans. So this obviously is important for things like search and rescue, disaster relief, and other kinds of scenarios. So in the real world, though, such robots are going to be operating in novel or unexplored environments. And so naturally, they're going to encounter things that they haven't seen before. And since the robot's part of a team, when this happens, it can ask the humans for help when it needs to learn a new concept, some kind of new action or new object that it hasn't seen before. So in order to enable this kind of dialogue-based learning, this is the goal here, but it's challenging for a number of reasons. So first, it's not clear what kinds of questions should be asked in order to resolve specific kinds of uncertainty. And second, it's not clear what form these questions should take in order to be efficient and not disruptive, and also how these questions can be used to support learning. So to address these challenges, we sought inspiration from human learners. So what we did is we collected human-human dialogue data from a collaborative reference resolution task, and we developed an annotation scheme to categorize the different question types. So the data were recently publicly released in a corpus called HURDLE, or Human Robot Dialogue Learning, and they can be used as an empirical basis for the development of algorithms for automated question generation. So the task here, the task for the study was developed in order to investigate how agents can use questions to resolve uncertainty in situated interaction. So as a result, we wanted a task that could elicit a great variety of question types. So we decided on a spacecraft environment since it's kind of naturally unfamiliar and lends itself well to a variety of novel sci-fi objects and locations and things that people need to learn. So in the task, we had people teleoperating a PR2 robot with their keyboards, and they can move around, pick up and place objects, and also interact with containers, some of which were locked. They had access to a graphical user interface, which you can see on the top picture here, which had a view of the scene and some other relevant information like a text box and some displays. Then there was a remote commander who was played by an experimenter, so like a Confederate, and they gave text instructions to participants and engaged in a kind of a live back and forth dialogue. And on the bottom here, you can see their perspective. So you can see kind of an overhead view of the entire environment with the robot's location there. And on the top right, you can see the robot's first-person view of the scene. And then this was synchronized in real time and updated, kind of like a multiplayer game. And then you can see the text box in both views, and that was used for the communication. So kind of the goal of the task was to put away 6 target objects out of a total of 18 in the environment. And the objects all had novel names. So for example, nonsensical sci-fi terms, so things like temporal emitter and modular capacitor. And they also had a variety of features. So they varied along 6 property dimensions, including shape, size, color, and others. And the picture here on the top right shows all of the objects that we had. And also this is a menu that allows people to take notes and write down names as they learn them. So the environment also contained a number of landmarks, so like things like windows, wall markings, etc. And then some of the containers also were locked, and they required learning specialized procedures to open. So on the bottom left, you can see these panels that had to be interacted with to open the containers. And some of these required arranging colored key cards in the right order or inputting a password, stuff like that. So kind of the point of all this was to elicit a variety of different kinds of question types. So we also manipulated speaker initiative in the study. So in one condition, people received instructions like, the modular capacitor goes in the alpha platform. And then typically this would lead to a dialogue to resolve the unknown reference. And then people would do this 6 times and then the task was over. In another condition, though, we shifted the initiative to the participant so that they were the ones responsible for establishing the task goals. So in this one, they might ask questions like, what's the first object I need to put away? Or, what do I even do, for example? So here's a clip of the study so you can get a sense of kind of what it looked like. And this data is also included in the Corpus release. So the quality here is not great, but the actual videos are much smoother than this. So you can see kind of this is the experimenter's view in the Unity window. So you can see the robot moving around. You can see their view up on the top, and you can see that the dialogue going on here. So the person was instructed to that they need to find the Tesla capacitor, but they're not sure what it was. So they asked the question, what does it look like? And they were given an answer. And now they're asking what color it is. This is kind of what the task was like in general. And again, the videos in the corpus are higher quality than this one here. Okay, so yeah, in terms of the study, so we conducted the study online using Amazon Mechanical Turk. And what we did was we developed a platform to support this kind of real-time interactive dialogue between study participants and the experimenter. So participants would sign up for the study on MTurk, and they answered some basic survey questions, and then they did a tutorial, which was done to make sure that they understood the basic controls and could actually do the task. Then the main task linked them to an external page, which had the environment rendered in WebGL. So this is actually really handy because it was rendered in the browser. So it reduced the need for the participants to have advanced graphics cards. So in other words, more people could participate. And like you saw, the environment itself was built in the Unity 3D game engine. And we used Photon Unity networking to handle the synchronization between the views and also the text-based dialogue interaction. And there's more details on that in the paper. So in total, we had 22 people performing the task, and they took about 35 minutes on average to complete it. So people were paid $10 plus an additional $2 performance bonus. And this was kind of necessary because we had quite a bit of attrition, actually. So in terms of measures, we collected all of the dialogue transcripts, the video data, and then we also automatically calculated task performance, which is the number of correct objects that they put away out of the 6 target objects, and also task duration, which was the time it took them to complete the task. So from this dialogue data, we developed an annotation scheme, and we used it to annotate the corpus for the utterance form and the content. So for utterance form, we labeled all the utterances based on whether they were yes, no questions, WH questions, things like who, what, where, when, how, why. Alternative questions, which are questions that present a list of options. So like, is it the red one or the yellow one? And then statements as well, which are non-questions. We also labeled the clarification type, which corresponds kind of to the function of the question or the particular kind of uncertainty that it aims to resolve. So you can see all the categories in the scheme on the right side here for question type. But broadly, these fell into 2 categories, confirmations and queries, which roughly corresponded to the distinction between yes, no questions and WH questions, although there were some exceptions. So we labeled various subtypes of these categories, as you can see in this figure here, and there's a more detailed one on the paper. And this included, questions related to properties of the objects, locations in the environment, procedural knowledge, goals, and others. So we had 2 independent annotators go through the corpus, and they reported the 82% raw agreement on the full data set. So here's an example of an annotation from the corpus. So this is an actual dialogue taken from the corpus and annotated. So you can see that the commander instructs the robot, the participant, that the Tesla capacitor goes in the secondary cabinet, shelf B. So then the participant asks what this looks like, which is labeled as an object description query with the subtype general, since it doesn't refer to any kind of specific feature about the object. And then after the commander's response, the participant acknowledges this and also asks a question about the color. So you can see here that this is actually a hybrid annotation. So it has statement and an object description query. So this time with a subtype color. And after being told that it's green, the participant tries to resolve what shelf B is by asking an object identification query. And finally, they complete the trial and ask what's next, which is labeled as a goal-related query. So that's kind of how the corpus was annotated. In terms of the basic statistics, the corpus contains 22 dialogues for a total of 13 hours. There are over 1,000 utterances, most of which are questions. There were 760 questions out of a total of 1122 utterances from the participants only. And on average, in a given dialogue, people made about 51 utterances, and 34 of these were questions. So more than half of their utterances were questions. And finally, the mean score was 77%, which corresponds to about 1 incorrect object out of the 6. and it took people about 35 minutes to complete the task. So in terms of the utterance types, you can see the distribution here. You can see that most of them are questions. We had 51% WH questions, 16% yes, no questions, and 3% alternative questions, and the rest were statements. Again, because some of these utterances have multiple types, the total here adds up to over 100%. So in the paper, we have a more detailed image of the distribution of the question types. But just generally speaking, the most frequently observed ones were queries about object descriptions, locations, and also procedural knowledge. Those were very common. Confirmations were less frequent, although those that were about the object features were also frequently observed. So something like, what color is it, or sorry, is it yellow or something would be an example of a confirmation about a feature. And color actually was one of the most frequently observed features, likely due to its salience. And people use this a lot, even though many of the objects have the same color. Okay, so to wrap up, the contributions of this paper are the hurdle corpus itself, which is available right now, the annotation scheme that we developed, and some preliminary analysis of the corpus, basic statistics for now. So overall, the annotated hurdle corpus kind of outlines the distribution of question forms and types that people used in this task to resolve referential ambiguity, specifically for situated interaction. So even though the annotation categories are based on our specific task, we still think that they represent general properties that apply to many different kinds of tasks. So things like color, location, landmarks, these are all common properties. And so we think that it should generalize well. However, this scheme still needs to be applied to other domains to confirm this and possibly to extend the scheme as well. So we think that the corpus can also serve as a resource for people interested in studying situated dialogue, especially in kind of HRI context. And the video data especially are currently unexplored territory that are just ripe for interesting analysis, mainly because they show the participants' field of view as they ask questions. So I think that should be interesting to study. And we're currently exploring kind of question generation strategies from the dialogue data to investigate how people ask questions and how that affected task performance. What was more effective question generation strategy. And we're also looking into the effect of speaker initiative and other factors on the process of question generation. So moving forward, we plan to use this corpus as the basis for automated approaches to question generation and agent learning. So specifically the labeled transcripts can serve either directly as training data, or they can inform policies for effective question generation and learning. Thanks for listening, and please check out the paper in the corpus if you're interested. Thanks.